Hello, welcome to Newsmakers Live. I'm your host, Ava Fredericks. We are here at the lovely Bar 1 on Memorial Drive. I'd like to also say hello to a few friends in the crowd. We have Mr. Al Bartel, who's running for mayor of Atlanta. That election will be coming up November 2013, so make sure that you show up at the polls. I have Mr. Daniel Edwards here as well, good friend. And also Miss Janan, who is an artist/liaison for Sierra Leone. Okay, I also have an amazing product behind me from Nairobi. This is from the Cosmetology Network. So we've got some great products. This will be segment 2, so we will get into that later. But for now, we're going to get into our election roundup. And I want to introduce our executive producer, Mr. Jim Welker.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to thank you all for coming out tonight. As you know, this is the season finale of Newsmakers. We've had a wonderful season. We've made national news 3 times, local news at every event, and we've grown a lot. We have a new demographic. We have a new audience. We've lost a lot of the older people, but we've gained an incredible number of people between the ages of 25 and 35. That's a lot due to Ms. Ava Fredericks, who, as a young Democrat, has brought all of the young Republicans in with her. We thank you for coming out. Look for us next season. We will be back in the spring. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I'd like to bring on to you Mr. Shelley Winter, who has distinguished himself this season by bringing a whole new flavor and a whole new group of individuals into our midst. Without further ado, again, Mr. Shelley Winter.
Thank you, Jim. Excuse me. I want to bring up our guests, I guess, tonight. One is not a guest. She's our hostess on a regular basis. But it's Miss Ava Fredericks is also an executive board member of the state of the Democratic Party. So we're going to bring her up, if you don't mind, sister.
Thank you.
And then also I'm going to bring up a good friend of mine. It's funny I say good friend because I haven't seen him in many years. We just remind each other of this. But Mr. Michael McNeely is the Georgia Executive Director of the Georgia Black Republican Council. And please give a round of applause to Mr. Michael McNeely. How you doing? I'm going to start off with, to both of you, I'm going to ask the question. Yes, sir. I want to ask the question to Michael first. I know it's usually ladies first, but I want to ask Michael first. What went wrong for Mitt Romney Tuesday night?
Well, we didn't win.
Besides that, why? What went wrong? Meaning in terms of, in terms of the race, a lot of us were led to believe that this was going to be closer, maybe than it was electoral college-wise. What do you think happened?
Well, certainly the storm, Sandy, I think played a factor in what happened, and there was a momentum from the first debate, and we saw that Mitt Romney was redefined. Because the Obama administration, the campaign rather, they were spending a lot of money talking about who Mitt Romney was. And so people got to see who he really was during the debates. And that momentum was there because they saw a man that had ideas, a man that had passion. And there was that momentum there. And so when Hurricane Sandy came around, the momentum got stifled because both campaigns had to stop campaigning, and they were focused on the community, focused on those that were hurting during that time, and still are. And so that, I think, was one of the major reasons that we saw a shift in the campaign, and was one of the reasons that led to Obama winning the second time.
So do you think that because of that natural disaster, do you think Obama was able to show his compassion, or was able to be presidential at the same time compassionate?
Well, sure, there was an opportunity for that, because at that point, he came out with a flight jacket on and was talking about what we needed to do to help people. And so there was an opportunity for him to be seen in a different light outside of campaign mode and being president. Sure.
Ava, as a young Democrat, what do you think the Obama campaign did right in order to win?
Wow, what did we do right? I think we focused on our main messages. We pushed our message. We pushed what Obama has done the past 4 years. to the people that need it. For example, the student loans, Pell Grants, health care. Those are issues that were important to the American people that I felt were more important than the $1 trillion deficit to our constituents, to the people we were speaking to. The people that we were speaking to don't wake up every morning and say, gee, I wonder what the $1 trillion deficit is. Oh, I'm so worried about it. They're more concerned about hoping my kid gets a good education. I hope I can afford to send my child to college. Those are the things that we were speaking to, that 47% and the other few percent that do pay taxes but still can't afford to send their kids to college. So I think just those few things is what we focused on. I mean, the act of God, I don't think that changed any voters' minds. I mean, I don't think the polls changed any differently from Sandy before or after. And I mean, they ran a great campaign. I think obviously the numbers, it was a close race. Like, that was what, 3 million voters? That's not even like half the states. Like, that's an incredibly close race. So it was a tough one. It was a tough one for the country to decide. Michael,
you had mentioned Sandy, and I kind of agree with Ava in this aspect that independents largely broke for Romney. And all the numbers that I've siphoned through, and it's taken me about almost 2 days now, I saw there was for about 3 million less white men turned out for Romney. Do you think that's because a lot of traditional Republican voters did not believe that he was who he was? When you say, we sort of saying the real Romney in the debates, do you think that people didn't believe that was the real Romney? They didn't know who the real Romney was?
I'm sure there were some people that felt that way. But I think that when you tell people that, hey, I'm the president and I'm going to fix your problems, the government's going to take care of it, then it's easy to sell to people. To say that, if you have a problem with your mortgage, the government, we'll look into that and see what we can do. If businesses are failing, government will come in and see what we can do and bail people out. And when you make all these promises, you have to be able to back them up. And so you see the trillions of dollars of debt that we're in. You saw over the course of 4 years the debt skyrocketing beyond the level that you've seen in past presidencies. And so these promises that have been made and will likely continue to be made have a cost. They have a price tag. And so when Ava talked about children and their education and getting them to school, well, in order to do that, people have to have more of their money so that they can invest in their children. But because of this debt that we're piling on generations, then that's going to have an impact on households. It's going to have an impact on education possibilities. It's going to have an impact everywhere we look.
Ava, Mike brings up an excellent point. You talk about the Pell Grants, you talk about the student loans. Where does that money come from? I mean, I know.
And I'm glad that you brought that up, Michael, because that's one thing that I think the Republican Party had a problem with addressing during the campaign. You talked about the debt, but you didn't talk about how it affected us. So for the common man, you have to speak to the common man. The common man, like for me, for example, I don't have a PhD in economics, so I don't know how the $1 trillion deficit affects me. I have to go and research that. And if you don't make it important for me to research that, then I won't. That's
Well, I don't think you need a PhD in economics to realize that, if I spend money I don't have, I've got to borrow it from somebody.
But how many people in this country spend money that they don't have?
And what the
Our
point,
credit scores won't.
Right, but I guess the point I'm trying to make is that if you continue to spend money you don't have, eventually you've got to pay it back to someone, and if you don't pay it back, something bad is going to happen. Just like it happens in my regular life.
Right.
My credit score goes down, or I can't get a car, or I can't get a house. So at some point, like Mike says, that money's going to come due. So when you talk about the student loans, my question to you is, because right after they announced that Barack won, Boehner and the administration put their lines in the sand on the debt ceiling. Now, we didn't hear about the debt ceiling the entire election, but right after the winner was announced, Barack Obama was announced as the winner, the next morning, the first words in the media was Boehner saying, we might look at tax hikes. So now that's where it affects your life, because you're going to pay more in taxes.
Right.
The next question I have for you, Ava, is, as a Democrat, one of the things that I looked at was this emerging demographic, Latinos, Asians broke for Obama by 14 points. Young women broke for Obama by, I think, 17 points. African Americans were at 93%, which, interestingly enough, was down from 4 years ago. The Latino population came out in large numbers. How do you maintain, as a Democratic Party, how do you maintain that black-brown coalition without it being to the detriment of your traditional loyal black voter in the Democratic Party? How do you keep the balance? You need the Latino population to vote for Democrat in order to keep this coalition going. How do you keep a coalition going without hurting the traditional loyal African American loyal Democratic voter? How do you keep that Latino vote happy, but at the same time continue to keep the black
We you know what?
vote happy?
It's a joint effort because we actually focus as a party that we need to get Latinos to the polls. A lot of people I spoke with who live in the state, who are legal, who can vote, never voted because no one ever asked them to. No one ever asked me to.
So illegal people voted?
No. People always say, "Oh, well, Mexicans can't vote because they're not legal." No, they're legal. That we have a huge population of legal
people vote.
Legal people, right? I just want to clear that up because I know my friend over here will be like, "Oh, they were illegal. Y'all got, we got to go check these ballots." But voter fraud. But anyway, so it was to me, it was more important. Me as a black person, because I'm black. I don't know if you guys noticed, but it was. Thank you. Getting our Latino brothers and sisters to the polls. I'm dating a Latino, currently, so it's not a thing where if I help them, I'm not going to help myself.
Well, the reason why I asked that question is because,
more so we're all Americans.
Right. Well, that's very good.
Because I want white people to be helped. I want Jewish people to be helped. I want the women to be okay. I like everybody. I like everybody in this country.
No, I understand. Me, on the other hand, I'm a conservative independent who's solely for my people. So,
you're black people.
Yes,
okay.
Absolutely. So you can be for everybody.
Right.
Me, I'm for the interests of my
Well,
people.
as a Democrat, the reason why
I say that.
No, I don't have to. I can do whatever I want.
Right.
I'm a contractor. I don't ever say whatever I want to say. But as a Democrat, the reason why I picked up the Democratic Party is because we're all inclusive.
No, I understand that.
And I have it's a Christian thing, I guess.
Hold on. Michael, the all-inclusive part, because she makes a point to say that as if the Republican Party is not. Do you want to answer that?
I certainly do. A couple of things. First of all, look at some of our elected officials. You've got Marco Rubio in Florida, Hispanic. You've got Susana Martinez, a governor on the West Coast. You've got Tim Scott, South Carolina, in the Congress. And those are just to name a few. So there's diversity in our elected officials, and I look forward to that number growing. But it's also interesting to hear Democrats talk about diversity, yet me as a black Republican, they have a problem with. I've been called, and some of my friends that are here have been called as well, sellouts,
I've heard them. And I'm not a Republican.
But if we talk about diversity, then we should be willing to hear individuals who have a different point of view. And instead of labeling people and calling people names, we ought to be able to talk about ideas. We ought to be talking about the different solutions that both parties bring and see where the facts lie, and then come to some consensus and go forward together. But we don't see that enough, and so again, it's interesting to hear diversity.
Well, the reason why I asked, the reason why I asked the question about this is a very important question that the Democrats are going to have to answer in 2016 and maybe before then. And the question is going to be, how do you keep this loyal constituency of African American voters who've been with you for 40 years happy and serve their needs, while at the same time starting to serve an entire new minority population in the Latino group who's looking for the exact same things as this African American group has been looking for 40 years? How does the Democratic Party do that over the next 4 years without losing one or the other?
Grassroots campaign. You think I can't name the blacks or Hispanics in the Democratic Party because I don't have that much time.
Well, no, but wait a minute. Look, in all fairness, I'm trying to be fair here. In all fairness, you can't name a governor and you can't name a senator.
Unfortunately, I can't.
Unfortunately,
I can't. I'm so glad you brought that up because I wanted to talk about that.
Senator.
Right. I'm so glad you brought coming up, because I wanted to talk about that. Because to change the flow of the conversation is, I was really concerned with, because everyone's like, oh, aren't you excited Obama won? And I wasn't as happy and excited as I should have been, because all of our state representatives, our state senate, and anyone else running, basically, Georgia's a red state. So I was very disappointed with our state turnout and how it seems what it looks like for us when I'm looking at the numbers, that our African American voters go into the polls, they mark president, and then they walk out. They don't look at the amendments. They don't look at anything else. They don't look at the officials that are going to affect their daily lives. More so, they don't show up for governor races. They only show up when there's a president on the ballot. And that's a problem, and that's a problem that the Democrats have always had. Republicans, I don't think, have had that problem. Their people go to the polls, rain or shine. But Democrats have a problem. In Georgia, we have more Democrats registered to vote than Republicans, but they don't show up. 1.5 million of our voters did not show up.
I think it's interesting whenever I hear that, as a person who just looks back and surveys things and doesn't really have a pointed interest in either way or the other, one way or the other. But it's interesting when I hear that, because in Georgia you don't register as a Republican or a Democrat, so it's always an issue. So when I registered, I just registered.
You can register Democrat or Republican.
But there's no party affiliation in the Georgia registration. There is none. So you only have registered
I
voters.
marked Democrat.
Well, most people don't mark anything, so that you can't tell. But it's interesting.
That means there's more not there than.
It could be. It could be. Or it could be a point where African American Democrats in the state of Georgia have not seen any change voting down the ticket, so there's no reason to. That could be it, and that's something that the Democratic Party of the state needs to address.
What changes are Democrats looking for, Shelley?
Which, I don't know, let's start off with some development in the black community in Atlanta. You know, why is Vine City now looking at building a stadium, for instance, where you've had poverty rates in Vine City for 35 years? Black mayor, black police chief, black city council members, black state rep, black state senator, black congressman, all representing that district for the last 35 years, yet you still got the worst zip code in the country in Vine City, and you're getting ready to pile money into a stadium of the taxpayers' dollars and just build on top of those people. So at a certain point, those people are the people that say, you know what, to hell with the down ticket, nothing's changed in my life, I'm just going to go.
They give up.
Of course why wouldn't they? Well, it's insane to vote down ticket if nothing's changed in their life.
I think it's more so important to make sure you put the right people in office. Because if you have someone in office and they're not doing anything, then people need to push those people out and put the right people in, regardless of party. You need to put the right people in.
Now you're speaking to the independent mind of me. You're speaking to the Republican mind of Mr. McNeely, but let a black Republican run against any of those people I just mentioned, and the Democratic Party will lambaste them and not talk about their records.
We talk about every Republican, white or black. We don't make it.
Speaking of that, let me ask this question. Let me ask this question. Ava and I want to ask this question here. So that was a national ticket. We got your analysis, both of your analysis on what went wrong, what happened right. Locally, we had a charter school amendment vote. Great articles. I recommend that everyone listening to me and watching us right now go Google Douglas Blackman, who's the author of the book Slavery by Another Name. He wrote an excellent article on the charter school amendment vote. And basically, the African American vote here in Georgia broke 66% for the charter school amendment, which was very interesting because all our institutions, the Black Church, Black NAACP, Georgia Legislative Black Caucus, every single African American led constituency or leadership, quote unquote, was against this vote. Yet, African American voters overwhelmingly supported the charter school amendment. I want to talk to you, Ava, first. What did you think about that? And then I want to ask your feelings on that, Mike.
My young Democrats felt that the way it was written, of course, was a little different, but of course you're going to say that when you lose. So, I feel like this. I feel like if it was written a certain way and they voted yes, then I hope it works. I would never put politics before kids, so I hope that it works. I, of course, wasn't in favor of it to begin with, but now that it's in place, as a Georgia citizen, as a Georgian, I hope it works.
Mr. McNeely?
Well, and you mentioned how there was that overwhelming support in the black community for
66%.
Yeah, for the amendment. Now, my question then becomes, if that is the case, yet you have Democrat leaders who were not in support. What do the voters do next time they go for re-election? Because they're not supporting, those elected officials are not supporting their view that school choice is the right way to go for families and their children going forward in the state of Georgia.
Well, okay, you're here, Georgia Black Republican Council. We've got a couple of years to the next local race, which is the governor's race in 2013 and 14, and then but we got a local race here in 2013 next year. What do you say to that African American constituency that came out overwhelmingly in support of an issue that their entire leadership was against? How do you make the pitch to them to say, hey, you know, look at the Republican Party, at least locally?
Well, I mean, you have to go where people are and have the conversation, just like we're having a conversation here tonight. You go where people are, you talk about that reality, and then you say if there's a difference with that issue, what might we have a difference in with some other issues? Let's talk about that. Let's talk about ideas. Let's talk about the differences. Let's don't call names. Let's don't look at those party labels, because while Ava's a Democrat and I'm a Republican, she's Ava Fredericks, and I'm Michael McNeely. So we need to look beyond the labels and say, well, what does Michael have to say? What does this individual have to say who's a candidate for House Rep or House Senate or Governor? Let's see what they're talking about, find out what their experiences are and how that relates to people. But we have to be willing to go where people are, and that's one of the things that I faulted about my party as a whole, is we have not done the necessary work to connect with others. You can't wait for people to come to you. You go where they are. It's the same thing in church. You can't convert people in the four walls of the church. You've got to go out and not just speak to the choir. So let's talk to people on a regular basis, not just during the election cycle. Let's do it all year long, all the time, and have those conversations. I'll give you a quick example of where I've seen that work for me. Every week, I'm going to the barbershop, okay? Go to the barbershop, people know that I'm involved in politics, and a lot of them know I'm a Republican. So they say, well, Michael, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? And while typically the conversation begins very hostile, oh, you're Republican. But as we talk, then we find out that we have many more things in common than we have differences.
Give me an example.
Well, for Social Security, for example, I had several gentlemen in the barbershop say, you know what, yeah, Social Security is not working, and there needs to be a change. Somebody needs to take leadership on this issue, and I don't have a problem with people having an option to take some of that money and put it in a private account to see how that works for them. Their choice. And so that is a Republican idea, yet in this barbershop you had black men and women who are vote typically for Democrats that are supporting that idea.
Ava, Affordable Health Care Act is largely a heritage foundation. I fault the Republicans for attacking it because it was their original idea.
Romney here.
Right, but I also fault the Democrats for not telling people, except for Barack is brave enough to tell people, but that was an
I preached it everywhere I went, and so did my party. So yeah, it was Romney's idea to begin with. There's a lot of things that I think, you know, we need to
But see, you can't count Romney because in my mind he's not a real Republican. It was a heritage foundation.
He was definitely a moderate, definitely.
Do you think
we started off
moderate.
moderate.
Cost him? I think moderate for
I think being moderate one time at one debate and then not being moderate at the next debate cost him. Because when I first, this is honest the truth, don't, it's on camera, oh well. But when I first heard of Romney back in, what was it, 09, 08, I thought, this is an okay guy. Because he's not extremely conservative, he's not a Tea Partier, he seems to have a good head on his shoulders. And if he won any position, I don't think I would be that mad. I saw what he was doing in Massachusetts, and I thought, okay, I'll be okay with this. I wouldn't be as frightened with him as I was of like Bush. Then the campaign started, and he crossed on me. He went from pro-choice to pro-life. He started privatizing everything, and then I was like, wait, what happened to the Romney that I liked when I first read up on him?
Michael,
everything changed.
Ava said he wasn't as bad as Bush. Talk to me about him.
Yeah, Bush had to come up today. Huh?
Right.
He always has to come up.
Now, what was your question?
Well, I just want to ask, what do you feel about George Bush? Because, I mean, I became more of a Republican during the first Bush term, pre-9/11. When he first ran for office, I was a heavy supporter, and the two words that got me was compassionate conservative. You know, I was one of those people that knew people in my community needed help. Not everybody. There were people taking advantage of the system, but people in my community needed help, and I was willing to help them, but I wasn't willing to just blanketly hand out money to people just to stay poor. So, I mean, do you think that the Republican Party needs to go back to a George Bush principled person, not actual policy because he was led astray, but principled George Bush, Ronald Reagan, or is there a new conservatism that needs to emerge in 2016?
Well, I mean, I think every year that goes by, things change. So you have to change the way you do things. I mean, just a few years ago, we didn't have Twitter and Facebook and those types of things. Now they're incorporated in everything that we do. When I was at the national convention for the Republican Party in Florida, in the same, I'm sure with the Democrats, is that people are there giving their speeches, and then you look around the room and the ticker tape bar going around, and you got people tweeting about what somebody just said. I mean, that's the society we live in. But as far as President Bush, compassionate conservative, that sounded really good. But see, there are other ways to help people other than just with these dollar signs, saying we're going to take money from over here, from these individuals that earned it, and move it over here and think that that's going to solve everything. Because it doesn't. I mean, you think about people that have their own children. The answer to problems is not just give your children money, but sometimes you have to teach them in other ways. You have to help them in other ways. So we need to look at other things. Education, for example. Our country spends more money than any other on education, yet our scores don't match up with what's going on in other countries, places that spend a whole lot less than what we do. And if you look at those numbers, you realize that a lot of that money is going towards administrative costs, and it's not tied in to the education of the children. So we've got to look beyond money and dollar signs, and let's talk about ideas and concepts that don't have to cost these astronomical amounts.
I have a few questions too.
Let me ask you one more question I have to ask you. One of the talking points, I would call it, from the Republican Party the last 2 days, I guess, has been the country is being taken over by the takers. That this election was won by people who want free stuff from the government. This has been the talking points. What do you say to that? Particularly when a record number of people are on food stamps or government assistance, not including Medicare, but on government assistance. What do you say? Is that sustainable as a country and as a party?
It's interesting because the last 4 years, Republicans were working, right? You guys were in the House? You guys were in the Senate? So, not the Senate? Okay, you were in the Senate? So, my question is, why didn't the legislation go towards maybe, I don't know, become tougher on those? For example, and this is just personal, I know certain people who are on food stamps who get $10 a month on food stamps, just disabled. But then I know other people who are just drunks, 50 years old, just drunk, and they make $200 a month in food stamps where they sell and make more money or whatever. And
you're as honest a Democrat as I've ever met.
But I mean, obviously,
I've never met an African American Democrat who ever admit that. But it's true.
But that's something that needs to be looked into. That's something that needs to be changed. There's people that need it, and there are people that don't.
In Florida, they tried it, and they tried to test welfare recipients
for drug tests. Come on.
That's not a way of helping that fraud.
No.
Okay, you wanted to ask a question. Go ahead.
My question is this though. I'm curious because as I watch the TV, like I watch Daily Show and Colbert Report, all those fun guys, and I'm always wondering when we do these clips of Fox News, I always wonder, do you guys feel that you're angry or do you not see it, or do you look at us and think that we're angry? I've always wondered that, because your temperament, every time I meet a Republican, you're the nicest one, by the way.
Okay.
But if I meet one or I speak longer than 5 minutes, they're ready to stab me in the chest. Like, I get some vicious Republicans, and I'm like,
Mike, you want to answer that?
I don't know any Republicans that would want to stab you in the chest.
I know some. I'll give you the number this afternoon.
Okay. But I think, most people, regardless of what party you're part of, they're passionate. And you have a certain idea about how things should be, and you want to voice that. And that's one thing that has been disheartening to me when I hear some Republicans being blamed or being called racist because they disagree with the president.
When I say racist, I say angry.
Well, but
he's talking about something else.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just not. I haven't had the experience where I've seen anger for another person. There's been anger about a difference in ideology. There's been an anger about, Republicans believing that we need to spend less and give people more of their money. In fact, You know, we talk about big businesses and, you know, the issue of giving businesses tax breaks. I think about it like this. You can raise taxes on businesses, for example, but what are businesses going to do? Are businesses paying the taxes, or are we as individuals paying the tax? Because if I'm the CEO at Walmart and you raise my taxes 20%, well, then I'm either going to not hire as many people, I may not give as many benefits to my employees, or I'm going to raise the price of the goods. And so
I'm always curious, what do y'all do with that extra money? Like, say, for example,
It's called profit. But
you know, like Mitt Romney, say,
called
he didn't want to
profit.
pay
That's
over 13%.
It's called
so,
profit.
what does he do with that extra 3%?
buy a new house, take a trip. It's called profit.
Okay.
I work hard, I make money. Ask Jim after this. Say to Jim, hey Jim, you know what? You make too much money. I need you to give me and Shelly and the cameraman and everybody more. And then find out what Jim's answer. That's essentially. But that's essentially what you're asking people to do. You see, ask the bar owner here, hey guys, you know what? Your waitresses, your wait staff, they do a great job. The DJ does a great job. We need you to pay them more. Then he's going to do one of two things.
So should they not be paid more for doing a good job?
Listen to me. Well, he's going to do one of two things. He's either going to cut the staff in order to pay some people more, or he's going to raise the price on his drinks, which is going to make you pay more in order for other people to pay more.
Why?
Because money is not just picked up off the ground or pulled out the sky.
So if I'm making, let's go back to this bar. I'm making a lot of money here.
Right.
And I'm making more money than I was 2 months ago.
Right.
But I'm not going to pay my people more because...
No, because it's called profit. I'm taking on all the risk.
But I'm making more. So I'm making a profit.
No. Because there's going to come a time when I may not be making more. And there's come a time when people will stop coming in. There's going to come a time.
So you need to save it, hoard it, hoard the money.
You need to make money and continue to make money. And you don't make money by paying people more. Ladies and gentlemen, my good friend hostess Ava Fredericks, my very good friend Michael McNeely of the Georgia Black Republican Council. I thank you both for joining me. Two young people, two young African Americans, both for their people, both for America. Just two sides of the issue, and they don't necessarily like each other. And I'd like to, I know, seriously, I'd like for us to have this conversation more and more in our community because it'll further our community. I want to bring up Jim Welcome, executive producer of Newsmakers Live.
All right, now you've heard it all. We've had a great season. Thank you all for coming, to our patrons, our subscribers, and our sponsors. This has been Newsmakers.